Listen up, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and agents. You're in the right place, unlocking the secrets to real estate investing and entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Titanium Vault, hosted by RJ Bates III. Here's RJ.
Hello and welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Nick Legamaro. Nick, how are you doing?
Doing great, RJ. Thanks for having me on.
Man, I'm just saying, I that took me a couple of times to get your name out. I think I jinxed myself there by saying I don't make mistakes and I don't edit a whole lot out of these. So that's pretty funny. So Nick, why don't you
don't feel bad? Don't feel too bad about it. I still have a hard time saying it. So.
Well, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself and tell everybody what it is that you do in real estate investing?
Yeah, my name is Nick Legamaro. I'm here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, also in Houston and San Antonio. Our primary real estate model is seller financing. So we look for properties, we find them, we fix them, we sell them, and we write the notes to the buyers, for the buyers that can't go out and get, traditional financing through a bank like Chase or Fargo or somebody like that.
Cool. So I know we want to dive into that. I know there's a ton of listeners that are interested in that business model. Let's kind of go back to the beginning and how did you get your start in real estate investing, and when you got your start, was it in seller financing or did you start in another form of real estate investing?
No, actually it sort of evolved into that. And I probably got started in real estate probably in the early 2000s, probably 02, 03. And to be quite honest with you, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff going on back then. There was very few REI groups. There was nothing on the internet. There was no really what I would call quality educators, coaches, mentors, whatever you want to call them. And so I did what everybody else did back then. And it was sort of like fix and flip. And because that was really the only thing that was going on. And I did a lot of lower end fix and flips and basically turnkeyed them and sold them to investors as rental properties that they put in the portfolio. Well, 07, 08 comes and all hell breaks loose. And I was fortunate enough to pretty much get out fairly unscathed, unlike a lot of other people at that time. And as a result of that, I didn't have a business, at least a profitable business that I could continue to do on a full-time basis. Because I was a full-time real estate investor at that time. I was not a passive weekend, do 2-3 deals a year kind of investor. So I basically went back into corporate America. And as a result of that, I realized real quick that that is not what I wanted to continue to do for a long period of time, as most people that once they get the taste of real estate and the freedom that allows you, the flexibility and the creativeness that you can bring to the table, it's really hard to go the other direction. So, I did that till about 010, 011, give or take. And I go, man, I really got to figure out how to crack this real estate code. And by that time, there was a lot of information available. And there's a lot of people out there that were quote unquote gurus, if you would, that had a lot of information, some of it verifiable, some of it not. And that's so I really took about 6 months while I was still working. And I said, I'm going to forget everything that I know. And I went back and I really started trying to analyze and dissect what people were saying I should do or recommendations. And really what it all led to at that point in time was wholesaling. Because wholesaling, to me, philosophically made the most sense. It was low risk. It had high returns if you managed it correctly. And it was very scalable. And it was something you can do not only in your local market, but there was definitely ways that you could scale it and do it in other markets besides the one that you were living in. So if you decided you want to live in the mountains of Montana and do business in, Shreveport, Louisiana, there was definitely a way that you could make that happen. So I was very intrigued. I was very intrigued by that. So that's sort of how I got my feet back in the game. And as a result of that, I was very cautious. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, like most people that get into real estate do. Some do, but some don't. And I was obviously very cautious with that capital because it was my money, not somebody else's. And two, I had to figure out how to make this work. So I basically started doing what most people do, which is sending out yellow letters and postcards, and in a very specific demographic and price point, because I didn't know what I was going to do, honestly. And as a result of that, I got a call for a property on a very, very modest, I would call it 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 700 square foot, 1940s build house. And the lady said she was going to be retiring from General Motors and moving to California, asked me if I'd be interested. And I said, sure. I didn't know. I had never wholesaled before. I said, sure, I'd be interested. What else was I going to say?
Right.
And so I said, what do you, I made a lot of mistakes. I first thing I asked her how much she wanted. She goes, well, I want about $25,000 for it. This back in 2011, I believe. And she goes, but it's rented and you can't disturb the tenants. So I went down the path. I went to look at the property. I could only look at it from next door. I go, oh, okay. I guess that's what a $25,000 house looks like. So I had no idea. And I said, okay, I guess I'll go back to the office and make an offer and see what I can do from there. And, just open the next page of the manual on wholesaling and figure out what the next step is. Well, as I was driving down the street, there was a sign that said Vende Casa. I had a little bit of Spanish. I knew what that meant. Right. And I go, well, let me give them a call. Let me call them, not knowing who they were. And she answers the phone. She goes, oh, I said, do you speak Spanish? Speak English? She said, yes. I go, I have this house for sale. I saw your sign. I have this house for sale. Would you be interested in buying it? And she goes, I don't know. Give me the address. So I gave it to the address. I go, you can't go inside, though. You can only look at it. She goes, how much do you want for it? I said, $35,000. It's before I even have it under contract. So moving on in the story here, she literally calls me. I got about a 30-minute drive back to where I was heading. I didn't even get back to where I was going. And she calls me and she goes, hey, I got a buyer outside your house. I go, okay. I freaked out. I go, they can't get inside. There's somebody inside. There's 10. She goes, no problem. She goes, they said, if you'll take $32,000, they don't need to see inside and not pay cash. I go, cool. I said, I guess that's a good deal. I go, how much do you want? She goes, I want $2,000. I said, 32 minus 2 is 30, less 25 to the seller, make $5,000. I said, okay, that's not a bad start, but it's a lot more than I had yesterday.
Right.
Well, fast forward, and to get this where it gets to the seller financing piece, I go, I have another conversation with this person. I go, that was pretty quick. You had buyers that have $25,000, $30,000 cash laying around that are looking to buy. She goes, yeah, I got a lot of them. And I started doing some research, and there's a lot of people out there that I would call cash rich and credit poor. They have a lot of cash. They don't have the capacity to go down and get a loan. So their only alternative is to go into a lower end property such as this and pay cash and then do the work and sweat equity and then eventually live in the property. I go, well, let me ask you a question. If I could find nicer properties for you that were $80,000 or $100,000, this is at the time, these same properties today are, $130,000, $140,000, $150,000, as you know,
right,
in the areas as everything appreciates. I go, if I found something at $80,000 or $100,000 in the $80,000 to $100,000 range, do you think there's somebody that would be interested in putting $20,000 down, $15,000 down, and then we would write the note. And she goes, absolutely. And so, 400 plus transactions later, here we are today, where we've made a pretty good business out of the seller financing model, specifically in the Dallas-Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Houston markets.
So you transitioned from wholesale, like your initial intentions were to wholesale, but you transitioned pretty quick from wholesaling to the seller financing pretty quickly, right?
Absolutely, because, I learned a long time ago, there's a reason why banks are in the banking business. Banks are in the business to loan money and make money off of amortization when they lend out money to buyers. They don't own real estate. It's pretty interesting concept. And why is that? Well, the main reason is they don't have to. They don't have to own real estate. They can hold the paper, put the liability and responsibility on somebody else and just collect the check every day. So, I don't know if you have a mortgage on your house. A lot of people do. I have one still. Was originally a Wells Fargo now, a Countrywide note. Now it's Bank of America. Had it for years. Never had them once call me.
Right.
On anything. Matter of fact, I don't think I've ever called them on anything. All they get is my check every month in the mail for my mortgage. It's a beautiful business. If my air conditioner goes out, I don't go call them.
Right.
It's just that simple. So I really started figuring out how I can still get passive income without necessarily having to do a buy and hold strategy. And it's just a different version. I mean, there's nothing wrong with buying and holding rental properties. It's just a different path that you have to take to go down.
So when you got started and you made that, that call and you said, hey, if I find an $80,000 to $100,000 house, will you have buyers and can they put $20,000 down? And she was like, absolutely. What were you planning on doing? Because you said you didn't have a whole lot of capital. So if you go find an $80,000 house, how were you going to purchase it, and how were you taking down that property yourself to then create the note with the end buyer?
Right. So that's a great question. So it was basically, there's different phases up to what we do. There's phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Phase 1 is the acquisition side. So think of it just like a traditional acquisition that you would go buy, fix, and flip, right? So you'd go down to a bank, you get a hard money loan, you get private funds, whatever it would take to securitize that property so you could go and do phase 1, which is basically buy and fix. So we would buy that property. So I'd go down and I'd get a hard money loan, bank loan, private money, my money, whatever it took. I'd get it locked up. We fix it, and then we basically build it to a retail finish out. But instead of putting it on MLS or to sell it to another investor, we would go focus on individuals that needed seller financing, and that was what we did. And then from there, we go sell it. We write the note. We'd have to wrap the note temporarily, and then since we didn't have a lot of capital, early on we had to sell all the notes, almost all of them, 100%, because that's how we would recapitalize, the business to be able to grow it. So, but what's interesting is what we found out is that say I have a property and I have that, let's just say that contract that we talked about earlier, or I sold it for 32 and I had it for 25 and I made $5,000. If I would have done the model that we do today with that same property, I probably would have made $15,000 or $20,000 even after selling the note and discounting the note and cashing back out of the deal, and that would have probably taken me 45 days. So the question becomes, do I want $5,000 in a week or two to do an assignment, or do I want 4 times that in 40 days? And that was really the difference. And it's like, as long as there's not inventory is sometimes hard to get, as you well know. It's very competitive out there. So we didn't want to just try to do a bunch of $5,000 deals. But we can it really was a wholesale model on steroids, if you will, because we're actually doing the same thing, doing a little bit more work, but knowing the end result was going to be 4 times the return. And that's sort of how it evolved. Now today, we keep all the notes because now we're fully capitalized. We have a track record. We have performance. So not only do we keep all the notes, we're actively buying the notes. So we're working with a lot of folks, especially in the Texas markets, that really want to sort of do the seller financing model and use it as a way to get additional, profits on the same deal, assuming that they follow. I always say it's not difficult. It's just complex, right. And there's a lot of moving parts to seller financing, and there's underwriting, there's the RMLO, there's Dodd-Frank, there's keeping the mortgage qualified, and all this stuff. It's not difficult. It's just complex. You just got to know how to do it, how to set it up and structure it. And as of all the deals that we've done, obviously we've become pretty efficient and good at what we do. So we work a lot with a lot of other investors that like the model are in the same position we were in 6 or 7 years ago. That okay, well, this is great. Maybe they have a couple $100,000. Well, pick any number you want, whether it be $100,000, be $1 million. At the end of the day, you're going to run out of capital when the seller finances not. There's no way around it, because even though you're getting great returns on that note you write, you still have to outlay whatever the cost was to be able to get those returns. So unless you're sitting on a big stack of cash, that money eventually runs out, which it did for us. So now we're able to come back in and we work with these guys and go, well, maybe you can't keep all the notes, or maybe you write 4 notes, sell them, make $20,000 each on them, and then get that $80,000 or $100,000 and just keep the next one. Sell 4, keep the next. Sell 4, keep the next, and then build up your portfolio slowly that way, without having to go and do it. Because banks don't loan. It's very difficult for banks to get a bank to understand what you're doing, because they like to loan on physical assets. You can go down and get a loan for a brick and mortar house that you're going to turn around and make it a buy and hold and rent it out. You can do that all day long. They get that. You can go borrow 70 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar, and use the property as collateral. But in a seller financing model, once you transfer that deed of ownership, which is what we do in the state of Texas, other states are different. There's land trust, and some people hold the deed or lease options. But in the state of Texas, we transfer the deed of ownership. So when I sell that property to the borrower or the buyer, they take deed. So now I'm holding a piece of paper that says you're going to pay me X amount of dollars per month for principal and interest, and I'm going to have the first lien position, just like Chase or Bank of America or Wells Fargo has on your primary residence. It's no different. But if I have that paper, it's just hard to comprehend. There's a lot of regulatory and compliance things that banks have to do. And honestly, banks are sort of lazy, and they don't have to go outside the box. They got enough stuff sitting right there in front of them to be able to capitalize on and make money. So you can take it to the bank. The better solution is, if you want to do that, just go take it to a private lender, and then you can basically maybe arbitrage at 2 or 3 points. Maybe you borrow money at 7 or 8%, on $70,000 of debt, but you're writing a note at 9 or 10% on $100,000, and then you make the spread of that. You can do that too.
Right. So let's go back to when you actually find these properties, you fix them up, now you're going to sell them. For the people that have never tried to do this before, how are you finding these end buyers? Because this isn't like, building a buyer's list for a wholesaler. You can go to a Facebook group and say, hey, I'm building my cash buyer's list, and you'll get 100 emails right away. So how are you finding these end buyers?
I think you just answered the question. It's the same way. It's what people don't realize. If you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it. And you'd be surprised. I would just tell somebody, you know what, next property you get, just for giggles, go post it on Facebook Marketplace, or go post it on Craigslist, or do whatever, and tell them you have a seller finance property, and see what kind of responses you get. There's a lot of people out there that cannot go down to the banks, especially in today's, we're in 2018 now. 10 years ago, the number of entrepreneurs or self-employed individuals was far less than there are today. There's just not as many pretty borrowers in the bank's eyes today as there was 10 years ago. Especially after 2007, 2008. Now, right, for example, the average credit score of a declined application, I haven't checked it in about 6 months. When I checked it last, probably about the first of the year, was like 710. Average credit score of a declined application for a home loan was a credit score of 710. Because there's other factors that go in it besides your credit score. There's DTI. Right. Are they a W-2 employee? All these factors that just, if you don't check all the boxes, you just don't get the deal. I mean, I'm a perfect example of it, and you probably are as well. It would be very difficult for me to walk into Chase Bank and say, I'm looking to buy a house. I need a home loan.
Right.
Because that's not how we're structured these days. It's a whole different, I get dividends. I'm not a W-2 employee. All those things negatively affect your ability to go out and borrow in today's environment.
Yeah, I was talking to someone else, and they're a multifamily investor, and he was laughing. He was like, "Well, you don't understand, RJ, because you haven't gotten into the multifamily world yet. Is that it would be easier for you to go to a bank and get a $5 million loan for a multifamily complex because it's an asset-based loan, and they want to look at the cash flow, than it is for you to go in and get a $150,000 loan for just a single-family property." And I laughed because I knew he was right, because no matter what, I mean, it is difficult to get those loans unless you have an established relationship. But I mean, it's like pulling teeth to just walk into a bank and just get a regular loan on a single family property. So I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I'm a very logical person, and dealing with banks just sometimes is not very logical. So
You couldn't have said it any better. It's very. I'm the same way. I'm very operational and very logical in mindset. And I go, how do you not see the value in this?
right,
How do you not see that this is a safer, more secure investment than what you're writing out right now? It's crazy because Freddie and Fannie, they're buying stuff right off the closing, right outside of closing, and paying 103, 104, 105% for these what I would call these pretty loans, because the borrower checks all the boxes. The guy that works for Frito-Lay or HP or Exxon or somebody like that that's got a good job. But look, let me tell you right now, it's not a matter if, it's just when that becomes a problem. Because when you write a 30-year note and you got a job and you're a middle class citizen and have a good paying job and you have a 9 to 5 and you get all that stuff, those jobs go away pretty quick. I mean,
Yeah.
we see stuff happening all the time. So then what happens? Now you're left holding the bag. And let me tell you this: when it hit the fan in 06, 07, 08, when it all started there, the people that were defaulting and the loans that were being not paid weren't the seller finance guys that were getting 20% down. The hard workers that were self-employed, those guys have to continue to do what they do. The people that were the issue came from the fact of the borrowers that I just described. That's where all the problem came from. It didn't come from the lower tier blue collar worker that we're talking about here. That's a fundamental piece of this whole model, is that, look, we want to put hardworking people in the properties that want home ownership. It's just that simple. And at the end of the day, our main objective is to be able to put them in there so they can have home ownership equal to or as close to possible as what it would cost them to rent that house for the same price. Just that simple. So we're not going into higher level price properties, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 houses where you're hoping for future appreciation to make the money. That's not what we do. We're talking about the stuff that's in the 10 to 20% underneath the median price point. That's the ultimate focus point. And that's why the wholesaling piece is such a critical part. It doesn't really matter. Wholesaling is just an extension of a lead, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about the lead. It doesn't matter if you're a buy and hold investor. It doesn't matter if you're a fix and flipper, you're commercial, you're a lender, you're a seller finance investor. It all has to start with some property. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean,
Right.
You have to acquire a property at some point in the process to be able to do any of those strategies. Well, wholesaling is the perfect vehicle for that. And that's why even today, we still are very active in that space, because even though it doesn't all fit into my buy box, it fits in somebody else's. And as you well know, from a wholesaler's perspective, you don't always get everything you go after for, right? Sometimes you get collateral deals as a result of it. Well, that house sold here, but how about I've got 10 other houses over here in a whole other county and zip code that you weren't even looking for.
Right.
And that comes about. Or you just you're looking for something that you want to buy and hold, but what happens when you get a $250,000 house that doesn't really fit a buy and hold strategy? And maybe it's a fix and flip property. Well, guess what? That's why wholesaling is so beneficial, because then you have the relationships established, and by sending those back out, you can basically wholesale, and then you keep the stuff that you want to keep for your own for your own portfolio.
Plus, with wholesaling, it kind of evolves just like your business did. When we started out as wholesaling, it never entered my mind that just a couple of years later, I would then turn around and be buying properties from other wholesalers that were just getting started. But I find myself doing it almost on a weekly basis. Like there's a property that got sent to me on Friday night, and it just came to my email, and I read it, and I was like, this deal is too good to be true. I can't even believe this just got emailed to me. And I spent like 4 minutes doing research on it and said, send me the assignment because this is exactly what I'm looking for. And that's just kind of how your business evolves over time. But, wholesaling allows you to do that because you're constantly building relationships with people. You're always getting your brand out there to people. And so eventually you end up on other wholesalers' lists. And then as you grow as a business person, you start buying their properties. It's just a natural evolution of being a wholesaler.
Well, and the beauty of that is that, it's funny, when we first started, we played in the space below the hedge fund. Hedge funds got real popular, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they had a very specific buy box, right? They want 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1980 construction or newer, certain zip codes. Well, that's great. I have no desire for any of that stuff. I like the stuff that's older than that. I like the mid-century stuff, 1950s, 1960s, stuff.
Right.
3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1-car garage, those kind of things. That stuff that nobody really wants, because those properties at the time, those were not really ideal for fix and flip. You're not going to turn around and fix and flip that and sell it for retail and make any kind of significant return, and they're surely not buying whole properties. I mean, why would you buy? I mean, most people that understand rentals and buying whole, you don't go out and buy a 1950 house and cash flow it. I mean, that's just that doesn't make sense. You go after something newer. So, but like you said, wholesaling is a revolving door, and what's great about it is that sometimes stuff comes in and sometimes stuff goes out, and like you said, I would probably. We'll probably do, I don't really know the exact number. We'll probably do 100 transactions this year. And I would say, I can't find all those deals myself. They have to come from other sources like wholesalers. Sometimes they come direct from seller, but I would say probably 70% of my volume probably has to come from other wholesalers because doesn't fit their investors' buy box. See, I'm in a little bit unique situation because I can go after the stuff that nobody else really wants. And I sort of built the model around that. So,
right.
But it's a great business, and plus the other thing is that I would say is that what I started doing, which for those that do wholesaling, it's really got to figure out a way to do creative deal structure, because when you're negotiating deals, for example, a home investor franchisee, they have a very specific buy box, right? Call it 65 cents on the dollar net after repairs. Well, what happens if the seller really wants to sell and they owe 80 cents on the dollar? I mean, right? They're at 80 cents versus 65 where you need to be. Well, doesn't mean that you can't still do a deal. There has to be some other creative deal structure, whether maybe you're buying it on terms, maybe you're doing a subject to or a wrap, or buying it out on payments. But don't walk away from the deal just because you think the buyer wants cash. Because I'm telling you right now, there's just as many just because a seller wants cash. There's just as many sellers out there that don't want cash that do. And once people understand that they don't have to just, offer cash every time, learn those techniques, because you spend a lot of money going out and trying to find motivated sellers. And
right.
You don't want, everybody has a different cost per lead or cost per acquisition, but you need to repurpose those leads, and you need to figure out any way it takes to be able to monetize them so that, you can turn around and make money. That's what this is all about.
So it's funny you bring that up, because we just had something happen this week, and I've never had something like this happen, but it goes back to what you're talking about, being creative with your offer. We got a lead. It was 5 occupied rental properties in a very nice neighborhood in Fort Worth. The problem with the properties was the rent rate was a little low. The taxes have been increasing. They've not been protesting the taxes. And so their cash flow over time has gone down. They got a postcard from us. They call us. We run the numbers. We understand that our offer is extremely low compared to what the market value of these properties is, but we're basing our offer off the cash flow that's currently coming in. So I talk to my acquisitions person and I tell them, look, I want you to make a couple of offers on this one, the cash offer, but also ask them if they'd be willing to sell or finance these properties to us. And maybe we can make the seller financing number, what they're going to net if they sell or finance, close to what their current cash flow has been on the properties. So we make these two offers. They decide they don't want to sell the properties. They want to leave the properties to their kids. Okay, that sucks. We didn't get the deal. But because we were creative with our offer, they said, hey, we really liked how y'all just structured that. And we're not really real estate investors. We just own these couple of properties, but we understand the value. We've done some research on your company, and we were curious how y'all were going to handle this. Would y'all be interested in having somebody come on and invest in you guys passively as a private money lender? So because of how we handled that situation and we made a creative offer, it kind of intrigued them. They did some more research on us and then called us back, and now they want to be a private money lender. You never really know how those leads are going to go, and I don't think that's going to happen very often. But it is extremely important to be creative with your offers, not just always stick to, like you said, that buy box, which is, it's 65% of ARV minus repairs, and that's my offer, and just walk away. Being creative can make other people think creatively and open up opportunities for you. So I appreciate you bringing that up just so I could kind of share that story, because I thought that was an awesome experience for our acquisitions person and just for our company as a whole.
Well, just to touch on that a little bit more in detail, especially for all the listeners you have, is that's why I like to be I'm transparent in everything that I do and I say, because look, this is a huge opportunity. We're just talking about the tip of the iceberg. If you look at 99% of the transactions that are done in real estate, most of the investors that are in it, they do one or two transactions a year. Right. They're just not that. The number of investors that do, multiple properties in any capacity is just, it's very small. It's a very fragmented industry. I don't have a problem sharing because, look, there's a lot of stuff that I can't eat. It's a 10,000 pound elephant. I can kill it, I can slay it, but I can only eat so much of it before it rots and it's no longer good. Well, so, by doing, good for others and sharing the information and experience that we have, and maybe they can feed off of it right now, and maybe they'll go catch something later and they can't eat it all and they pass it back on. It goes back and forth. And it really what it boils down to is, like, you see a lot of these signs, you see bandit signs all over the place, most places, it's like, oh man, they're selling houses, but those are great leads, because if you're selling a house, guess what you have to do before you sell it? You got to buy it. It's got to come from someplace, right? So it's a two-way street. So all those signs I see, I call every one of them, because they're actively hustling a property that they found. Well, what if I have a house and I don't really want to sell and it's in an area that I want? Well, maybe I call wholesaler. I mean, it's just coming up with strategies. You don't have to lock yourself in a box that limits your ability to really be creative to be able to get these deals. And that's what I love about real estate in general, and just it doesn't matter what vertical you choose. There's still creativity and that's needed in any of those.
So it's funny you bring that up. I'm going to go ahead and use this moment, this platform, to go ahead and answer the question. Since I've created the podcast, I randomly get people that listen to an episode and then they find me on Facebook and they send me a message. And I get at least once a week a new wholesaler ask me, I have a property under contract. I'm trying to sell it. I don't have any cash buyers, but I do know this other wholesaler who says they could co-wholesale with me and we could JV and split the profits. Should I do this? To everyone who ever thinks that they need to ask me that question, the answer is hell yes, you need to do it. Co-wholesale with somebody. 100% of zero is still zero. Like, go out and move the property, get your money, and get some experience, and maybe learn something from the more experienced wholesaler. So I'm glad you brought that up because
Yeah, well, it's education. You go to college, you pay to go to college if you choose to go down that road, right? You go to trade school, you got to pay to do that. You pay them to learn, right? This is different. You're actually going to get to make money to learn, even though it might not be at 100%. But like you said, 100% of nothing, 50% of something's better than 100% of nothing. And now you got to protect yourself, and you can't. There's a lot of people you got to be careful of, and you got to know who you're doing business with. But there's a way to protect yourself. I mean, I would strongly suggest what I used to do when I was dealing with people that I didn't know is that I'd have it under contract, and then I would go and I'd file an MOA on the property, which is basically says that there's somebody has the rights to this property. So that is basically putting a cloud on title. So that when it does go to title, somebody tries to circumvent you, which sellers have tried to do to me in the past, and you may have had this experience as well, where they go and okay, now because I'm not the only one knocking on their door trying to buy their property. Well, I give them an offer, and then 2 days later, RJ comes knocking on the door and offers them $10,000 more. All of a sudden, they're not interested in dealing with me. So there's ways to protect yourself. I'm not an attorney. I'm not going to pretend to be one, but there's definitely ways to protect yourself once you have a contract, and have some kind of financial consideration that's been made to control that property.
The other aspect of that is figure out who you're doing business with. I mean, nowadays with social media and the internet, it's pretty simple to figure out if the person you're doing business with is someone of integrity and character and the amount of volume that they're doing as a business person. And at the end of the day, I mean, I still co-wholesale deals with people all the time. I mean, I get a property and I just either my marketing attempts didn't reach the right buyer or the buyer that I thought I would have for that particular property is overwhelmed and they're not buying right now, whatever the situation is. But another wholesaler might have a buyer just sitting there waiting for that property. So it's just very important to keep your options and your opportunities open. So appreciate you bringing that up. So I always like to wrap up these interviews by kind of figuring out, what your why is. You've been doing this since the early 2000s, and then, you went back to corporate America, realized that wasn't for you, and now, you've got this machine going, 100 deals a year, seller financing, creating these notes. What's your driving force? What's your why behind what you're doing?
Well, I mean, I just don't want to have to rely on anybody else for my success or my livelihood. When I grew up, it was, go get a good job, go work 9 to 5, get your 2 weeks of vacation a year, retire and, spend your last golden years doing whatever the heck you want to do. I mean, I call it, that's just not in my DNA. I mean, that's a great solution for somebody that doesn't have that, that isn't really concerned about that. They like that consistency and that regimented style. I just don't like, I don't want to get burned. And I think I see that a lot of times with friends and family and just across the United States is that, most people are operating, and living, paycheck to paycheck. They're one paycheck away from, being in a undesirable situation. And if through real estate, even if you want to continue to work in that capacity, that's great. And I did it for many, many, many years. I probably would still have done it, still do it today if I had another vehicle that I could fall back on. The ability to get in and get some kind of passive income to offset that in case of a rainy day. And I never had that. I was never taught that. But today, people that are listening on this podcast, all that information is readily available. There's no reason that you can't just go out and start doing deals. Get a contract, and then figure it out. And with that, you don't have to take the leap of faith like I did. And or others do, test the water, put the toe in first, go, like you said, go wholesale, go co-wholesale a deal or two to get comfortable. You don't have to, you don't have to put all your chips in the beginning and go chasing and seeing if this is really going to work. And I will tell you this, I don't really care what you decide you want to do, whether you want to buy and hold, fix and flip, wholesale, create notes, write notes, do construction. It really makes no difference. You can make money and significant money in any one of those. What it really boils down to is just getting off the couch and going and doing something and making a commitment to do it, and trusting that you have, confidence in your ability to figure it out. You don't have to know everything. In fact, even in my company today, if you ask me a question and I know the answer, that's not necessarily a good thing, because I might not be focusing on what I really should be doing, which is growing the business. There's people that I have on my team that, I can ask, how many properties did we sell last month? Or what's our average cost per lead? Or what's our average profit per deal? I mean, I know what that is, but I have the ability to go and get it. This is no different. You got to walk before you run. Take it slow, find a deal, partner with somebody that you trust. And, I do that all the time. I mean, I work with investors, if they want to wholesale deals. Look, I've been doing this a long time, and there's nothing that I get more enjoyment out of it is really helping other people that really want to help themselves. And I'm not a charity from that perspective. You got to put in the work, but I will show you what I would do and how I do it. And just like you would, to really, because there's great satisfaction in helping people, whether it's in real estate or just in life in general. Give them a hand to help them up, just to get them going down the right path. That's really what we're doing with the seller financing program. It's really no different. We're helping hardworking families obtain home ownership when they've been told time and time again that they can't own because of some situation in their life. And it's no different than, with a real estate investor, just pointing them in the right direction and giving them the right tools. It's like this. I can give you, I can put you in the woods, and I can, you have to get yourself out. But if I give you a GPS, you can figure out how to get out. Like, I'm not going to tell you how to get out. I'm not going to walk you out. Here's the tool. Here's a tool that will help you get out. You got to figure out how to use that tool to do so. And this is no different.
Right. I mean, it's funny you bring that up, because I get asked all the time, hey, man, I want to get started. Will you coach me? Will you mentor me? There's a certain amount of people that I've taken on in that regard, but I'm not a coach. I'm a real estate investor. So I tell them, go find a deal. Find a deal. Bring me the address. I'll pull comps for you. I'll walk you through. I'll tell you what your offer should be. Go get the property under contract. I'll either buy it myself or I'll help you wholesale it, and I'll split the deal with you. It's that simple. And they're like, well, I don't know. I don't know where to find a house. Start driving. Just drive around. There's this app, Driving for Dollars. You can go find 5 houses right now for free, and it'll give you all of the contact information. I mean, it's like, it's that simple. So for people that are out there and they're thinking and they're on the fence about getting started, you just have to make that leap of faith. Like Nick said, you don't have to go quit your job, but you have to go take action of some sort. And you can't just sit back and hope that someone's going to lead you, like you said, through the forest. The GPS is there.
Yeah, I learned.
You just got to use it.
I learned a long time ago, hope is not a good business strategy. So, and you don't need a lot of money to really get started in this. And I mean, when you say, you can do real estate with no money out of pocket, it's true, because I'll tell you what, if you bring me a deal and you find it, I will figure out a way to get that deal done. It didn't cost you a nickel. Now, you might have to be the one that oversees the rehab or the sales, but that's not any money out of pocket to you, right? And you have to find the inventory. You'd be surprised. You would be surprised. And this is something that I would encourage everybody that's listening to at least try. Get your list of friends and families, contacts, whatever. Pick your top 100, and tell them what you're doing. Look, I'm in real estate. I am looking for properties to buy. I'm a cash buyer, and send that information out. You would be surprised how many people either are in that situation or know somebody that has a property that they're looking to do something with. Now, is it going to always be a deal? No, but that's not the point. The point is, all you have to do is ask. There's nothing. It's not threatening. It's just, hey, I'm looking to buy a property. Do you know anybody that's selling? I mean, of course. I mean, everybody has referrals, and you do this in your everyday life. If you're looking for a place to eat, you go, hey, I'm looking for an Italian restaurant. I'm going to be in Dallas. What do you know? I'll tell you, well, it didn't cost you anything, and it was just asking the question. It's no different. Just ask. You don't have to. It's not like you're trying to sell them a vacuum cleaner or something. You're actually on the other side now. You're actually a buyer. Buyers have control. I mean, buyers, you're helping people out of a situation. That's the other beauty that we never really talk about, is that people think that wholesaling has some negative connotation sometimes because you're buying properties at just deep discounts, but a lot of times you're really helping a seller with a problem that they can't figure out and solve themselves. So it's not always about the money. It's about just, releasing them from the stress or the, whatever it's that's tying them down that they're really trying to get out of. So it's just being a problem solver is really what it boils down to.
One of the first things I learned in real estate investing is always ask, because if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah, you can't say it better than that.
Right. So that's something one of my mentors taught me, and that's been one of our core values since day one. So speaking of that, we're going to wrap up this interview because now I'm going to ask Nick to buy a property from me.
Excellent.
So,
I hope you have more than one to sell me. I'm a little short right now.
Okay, I'm going to try to sell them 2 right after this podcast interview. So Nick, thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing your business model. It's been great to get to know you. You're another Investor Fuel member. So I appreciate everything that you've helped us out in Investor Fuel, and then also coming on the podcast and sharing your story with us.
Well, I appreciate that, RJ, and I do want to make sure that I say, thanks to you, not only for what you're doing with the podcast, but also what you're doing with the charity that you have with the Beat Kids Cancer. I think that's very important, and I hope and encourage everybody that's listening to go check it out. I know they can access through the Facebook site, yes, through the podcast, but very, very noble, very much needed, and I thoroughly appreciate the opportunity to play in the golf tournament that you're putting on in October, and look forward to maybe helping out in some other capacity.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, all the best. Now go get a deal.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening to the Titanium Vault with your host, RJ Bates III. For more info and to stay up to date, visit www.podcast.thetitaniumvault.com and on facebook.com/The Titanium Vault. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time on the Titanium Vault.